Just moments ago, North Korea fired more than 10 ballistic missiles into the sea. You might think we've seen this before, but the timing and context behind these launches make it particularly concerning. South Korea's military reported that the missiles were fired from an area near Pyongyang at around 1:20 p.m. local time. The missiles traveled towards the waters off North Korea's east coast, right as U.S. and South Korean forces are in the midst of their annual joint military drills. Japan's Coast Guard also detected what could be a ballistic missile, and Japan's NHK public broadcaster mentioned it landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, aware of the situation, stated it didn't pose an immediate threat to U.S. personnel, territory, or allies. But why now? What could this launch signify, and what will be the consequences? In this video, we'll break down what we know so far, the possible reasons behind this launch, and what comes next. But before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you stay up to date as this rapidly evolving situation unfolds. When things move quickly in East Asia, headlines often lag behind reality. We'll be following the confirmed details as they come in, and I want you to participate in this one. Drop a comment right now. Do you think this launch was a warning to the U.S., South Korea, or a signal to North Korea's own domestic audience? Type A for U.S., B for South Korea, and C for domestic audience. Now, let's get into the facts. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed North Korea fired more than 10 ballistic missiles. The missiles were launched from near Pyongyang at around 1:20 p.m. and headed towards the waters off the east coast. Japan's Coast Guard detected what could be a ballistic missile, and NHK reported it landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone, EEZ. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command acknowledged the launch and said they're consulting with allies, but there's no immediate threat at this point. These are the key confirmed facts. But here's what we don't know yet. The exact missile types fired, their ranges, or splashdown zones. We don't even have confirmation that any missile crossed into restricted zones. So, when you see people online claiming they know exactly what happened, remember, this is still a developing situation. Now, let's talk about why this launch happened when it did. The timing is crucial. It comes as the U.S. and South Korea are conducting their annual military exercises, which include large-scale river-crossing drills involving tanks and armored combat vehicles. This is important because North Korea has a long history of reacting to joint U.S.-South Korea drills with missile tests, launches, or threats. While the U.S. and South Korea say these drills are defensive and readiness-based, North Korea claims they're rehearsals for invasion. This predictable pattern is exactly why missile launches during drills are so dangerous. A misinterpreted radar reading or a mistaken trajectory could lead to a crisis. The timing isn't just symbolic, it's testing, it's strategic messaging. But there's another layer to the timing that many might have missed. Just days ago, South Korea's Prime Minister met with President Donald Trump to discuss ways to reopen dialogue with Pyongyang. This creates a critical context for North Korea. On one hand, there are joint military drills. On the other, there's talk of reopening dialogue. From Pyongyang's perspective, it could look like the same old pattern: pressure plus invitations. Whether that's Washington's intention or not, North Korea may have seen this as an opportunity to make a statement, using missile launches to force the world to pay attention. So, what's the big question here? Is this launch a message or is it a test? The reality is, it could be both. Let's break down the potential reasons for this launch. Missile launches can serve many strategic purposes, and North Korea has employed various strategies over the years. First, deterrent signaling. North Korea wants the world to believe it has weapons that can be launched quickly, repeatedly, and with force. It's not necessarily about hitting a target today, it's about being taken seriously tomorrow, a show of power that sends a message to the international community. Second, readiness and training. A barrage of more than 10 missiles, if that's indeed what happened, can stress test key systems. From command and control to fuel and transport systems, launching so many missiles in a short period helps North Korea practice how to respond under pressure. This ensures the country is prepared to operate in a crisis. Third, political leverage. Missile tests disrupt the diplomatic landscape. They force the global conversation to shift toward North Korea, pushing other international issues out of the headlines. Suddenly, every meeting is about North Korea, and every public statement must address their actions. It's a way to reset the political dialogue and keep the world focused on Pyongyang's demands. Fourth, the domestic narrative. North Korea's leadership is deeply concerned with internal legitimacy and strength. When major drills by the U.S. and South Korea happen nearby, they can be portrayed domestically as a direct threat, while missile launches can be framed as a response to foreign provocation. This strengthens the internal narrative of resistance and sovereignty, showcasing North Korea as an unyielding force against external pressures. So, which of these four functions is the driving force behind today's launch? We can't say for certain based on the current information, but using the broader context, we can make an educated guess. North Korea may want to signal its strength, remind the world of its missile capabilities, and send a message to both external forces and its own people. But here's a critical point to consider. If you were in North Korea's shoes, what would you want the world to believe after today's missile launch? Would you want the world to think that you can overwhelm defense systems through sheer volume? Or would you want them to believe that your missile launches coming directly from Pyongyang can happen at will? Maybe you want the world to think that your drills carry consequences? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, let's explore the immediate reactions. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has publicly stated that there's no immediate threat and that they're consulting with allies. While this message is carefully crafted to avoid panic, it's also a way to prevent North Korea from claiming an emergency response. On the other hand, South Korea released detailed detection information quickly, signaling their readiness and transparency. Meanwhile, Japan's statement about the missile landing outside its EEZ helps reassure the public while documenting the event. But here's the important part. When officials say there's no immediate threat, it doesn't mean there's no danger. The real danger comes from escalation cycles. The issue isn't just the first missile launch, it's what happens afterward. Once the first missile is launched, the situation becomes conversational. One side does drills, the other side responds with launches. The cycle continues until something eventually breaks. In this region, missile launches and military drills are deeply intertwined, creating an environment where every action is watched closely. The key question now is, what happens after the first volley of launches? This is where things can get tricky. There are a few different possible scenarios. Scenario 1, North Korea stops here. The missile launches are a one-off, signaling a brief moment of tension that soon cools down. In this case, you might see official condemnations and continued military drills, but no immediate follow-up launches. Everyone moves on, and the tension fades. Scenario 2, North Korea escalates. After today's launch, they could continue testing missiles, either with more launches or by testing new categories of weapons. The aim would be to dominate the global news cycle, forcing everyone to pay attention to North Korea and raising the stakes of ongoing allied drills. Scenario 3, an accident creates a crisis. This is the nightmare scenario. A missile malfunctions or a splashdown happens closer to a shipping lane than expected. Alternatively, a missile trajectory could be misinterpreted by a warning system, or civilian aviation could be endangered. These are the moments that could force the world into a diplomatic emergency with heightened risks of conflict. Scenario 4. The launch becomes part of a negotiation cycle. North Korea raises tensions with a missile launch, then offers talks to lower the temperature. This would allow Pyongyang to extract concessions or relief, using missile tests as leverage to drive its diplomatic agenda. As we analyze these possibilities, one thing becomes clear. The risk doesn't come from the repetition of missile launches. Instead, it comes from the fatigue of routine. When missile launches become normal, the global community becomes desensitized. And that's dangerous. Because when people stop paying attention, leaders may feel the need to take bigger risks to get the world's focus back. Now, let's zoom in on what the drills themselves represent and why North Korea is focusing on them so aggressively. On Saturday, U.S. and South Korean troops conducted river crossing drills, demonstrating the operational capabilities required for large-scale ground maneuver. From North Korea's perspective, these drills can be framed as rehearsals for an invasion, reinforcing the perception that the U.S. and South Korea are preparing for action. So why do these drills matter so much? For North Korea, the sight of U.S. and South Korean troops conducting complex military operations is a direct signal that the allies are preparing for a potential conflict. A river crossing drill, for example, is not just a symbolic event, it's an operational capability, one that demonstrates the ability to move large forces quickly and effectively. From Pyongyang's perspective, this could be seen as a rehearsal for an invasion, a point the North Korean regime has frequently emphasized in its narrative to justify missile launches. But there's a significant contradiction here. While the Allies describe these drills as purely defensive and readiness-based, North Korea interprets them as aggressive. And this difference in perception is what fuels the cycle of tension. North Korea reacts with missile launches, and the U.S. and South Korea argue that they're simply preparing to defend themselves. The world watches as each side reinforces its position, heightening the stakes and the risk of escalation. Now, let's address one of the most frequently asked questions in this context. If President Trump wants to engage in dialogue with North Korea, why do the drills continue? The reality is that diplomacy and deterrence often run parallel. It's not unusual for diplomatic efforts to coincide with military readiness exercises. But the challenge here lies in the mixed signals. If the U.S. and South Korea continue their drills while expressing an interest in talks, Pyongyang may view it as a lack of sincerity. The result? A deepening of the mistrust that has plagued the region for decades. In fact, as Reuters reports, discussions about reopening dialogue have been ongoing, particularly after South Korea's prime minister met with President Trump. Both sides appear eager to sit down, but the critical question remains, does North Korea truly want talks on terms that are possible? North Korea has historically demanded security guarantees, sanctions relief, and recognition, while the U.S. and its allies have insisted on limits, verification, and de-escalation. It's this gap between the two sides that creates a difficult path forward. Missiles may serve as a tool to harden positions, but they can also force the world to focus on North Korea's demands. Whether today's missile launch is a part of that cycle remains to be seen, but the timing matters. If Pyongyang is indeed sending a message, what is it trying to communicate to the world? That's a question we need to keep in mind as we move forward. As we consider the implications of today's missile launches, it's important to take a step back and examine the larger picture. The geopolitical dynamics at play in East Asia are not just about the Korean Peninsula, they stretch much farther, affecting the strategic landscape of the entire region. Right now, there are three overlapping realities that are shaping the response to this missile launch. Reality 1. The Korean Peninsula is technically still at war. While an armistice was signed in 1953, a peace treaty was never concluded, which means that every action in the region is viewed through the lens of ongoing conflict. Any military maneuver or missile launch is not just an isolated event. It's seen as a potential step toward escalation. Reality 2. Alliances in the region are tightening. The U.S. maintains a significant military presence in South Korea, with around 28,500 troops stationed there. The ongoing military drills serve as a visible reminder of this integrated military posture, reinforcing the message that the U.S. is committed to its allies' defense. Reality 3. The rapid advancement of missile technology is changing the timeline of decision-making. In the past, leaders had time to assess threats, verify intelligence, and weigh options. Today, with the ability to launch missiles quickly, decision-making processes are compressed, leaving less room for careful analysis. This shortens the window for action and increases the risk of miscalculation. These three realities make every missile launch and every military exercise more dangerous. The tension in East Asia is not just a matter of rhetoric. It's a matter of real-time decisions that could trigger a much larger conflict. Today's missile launches, while not an immediate threat to U.S. or South Korean territory, highlight how even routine actions in this region come with higher stakes. But there's something else at play here: volume. North Korea didn't just launch one missile, it launched more than 10. And in military strategy, volume matters. A single missile launch can be a test. Multiple launches signal something much more significant. It shows North Korea's capacity to launch quickly and repeatedly, and it raises questions about their tactical doctrine. While we don't yet know the exact details of the missile models or ranges, the sheer number of launches is a signal in itself. This is why military planners in South Korea and Japan are paying close attention. A large number of missile launches can indicate that North Korea is testing not just its weapons, but its ability to overwhelm or complicate defense systems. And that's what makes today's launch so concerning. It's not just about the missiles themselves, but what they represent in terms of North Korea's strategic capabilities. So, what happens next? This is the question that everyone is asking. After a launch like this, there are several potential courses of action. First, the U.S. and South Korea will likely confirm the facts. They will analyze the number of launches, the trajectories, the altitudes, and the splashdown zones. This will give them a clearer picture of what transpired and help them determine the appropriate response. Second, information will be shared across allies. South Korea and Japan have sophisticated sensors, and the U.S. has regional assets. Together, they will compile the intelligence and form a combined picture of the situation. This is how the allies respond to missile launches, by coordinating their intelligence and preparing a unified strategy. Third, Messaging is crucial. Public statements from officials are never just about relaying information. They are also about managing the message. If officials overreact, they risk escalating the situation further. If they underreact, they risk appearing weak. The ideal response is measured. Confirm the facts, condemn the launch, consult with allies, and maintain readiness for any further developments. But the real question is, how will North Korea respond? Will they continue testing missiles, or will they dial back their provocations? There are a few possible scenarios. North Korea could stop here, using today's launch as a one-off signal before the cycle cools down. Alternatively, they could escalate with additional launches or tests. The most dangerous scenario is an accidental crisis, where a missile malfunction or misinterpreted trajectory sparks a larger conflict. The key to avoiding escalation lies in the next few days. What will the U.S., South Korea, and Japan do in response? Will they change their defense posture or adjust their messaging? And what about North Korea? Will they use this launch as leverage in negotiations, or will they continue to raise tensions? As the situation develops, it's crucial that we all stay informed. If you want updates on this issue, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you think this situation is headed towards escalation, hit like and leave a comment below. What do you think will happen next? Do you believe North Korea will launch again? Will the drills continue unchanged, or will they be scaled back? And do you think we'll see another meeting between Trump and Kim Jong Un? This story is still unfolding, and the future of East Asia's stability hinges on the decisions made in the coming days. Stay tuned, stay informed, and stay accurate. If you found this video insightful, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more updates. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think will happen next? Do you think North Korea will launch again? Let's talk about it in the comments below.